Day 37. Snow falling on Montana. The kettle began to whistle 19 seconds before the galaxy stopped watching. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. On the screen, Supreme Arbiter Vex's central eye had gone dark, not closed, just frozen. His translator gland pulsed twice, then stopped. Somewhere in the assembly chamber, 412 news networks broadcast a silence that lasted long enough for Helena Vance to count her breaths. 14, the same number she'd counted 37 days ago. She sat at her kitchen table in Montana. Snow piled on the windowsill. The kettle's whistle faded into steam. Her hand rested on a ceramic cup, chipped rim, 2 sugars brought from Earth 9 years, 3 months, and 11 days ago. The cup had crossed light years, survived a war, outlasted an empire's arrogance. On the screen, Vex's eye stayed dark. Helena took a slow sip. Behind Vex, on a secondary screen she could see but he couldn't, T-Claw's crystalline carapace pulsed amber. "You called us weak," Helena said. "We walked out. You shut the gates yourselves when you voted us down." The kettle's whistle faded into nothing. "And now you get to watch." The screen flickered. Vex's translator gland hummed, trying to reboot, but Helena was already looking past him. The Xylos hadn't just brought 6 species, they'd brought a list. She had been waiting 11 years for this moment. What she said next changed every trade route in the galaxy. Stay close. 37 days earlier, the Galactic Assembly Central Chamber. The cold seeped through the soles of Helena's shoes. Cheap diplomatic issue. The kind the Assembly issued to non-voting member species. The pale stone floor had been polished for 847 years, but no amount of wax could warm it. She counted her breaths, 14 so far. A warm cup of black tea rested against her palm, 2 sugars. She'd made it herself because the Assembly's catering service didn't stock human food. The ceramic was chipped. She'd brought it from Earth 9 years ago. She remembered the day she packed it. Marcus had laughed at her. "You're bringing a cup into space?" She had laughed back. "It's not a cup, it's a reminder." The chamber rose 200 meters high, pillars of luminous obsidian, platforms for the 93 voting species arranged in descending tiers. Humans sat on the lowest platform. Section 94, Bench 7, designed to make them crane their necks upward like children. Holo-recorders from 412 news networks broadcast live. Supreme Arbiter Vex lowered his central eye. The cephalid was 7 feet of gelatinous biped, his skin iridescent purple, pulsing with slow agitation. 3 auxiliary eyes on stalks swiveled toward the human delegation. His translator gland hummed. "The human delegation's petition for resource access is denied." His voice hissed through the gland. 87 votes against, 4 abstentions, 2 in favor. Helena took a slow sip of her tea. The warmth spread through her chest. The Assembly finds humanity's industrial output insufficient, biological endurance inadequate, diplomatic heritage absent. Vex's central eye narrowed. Recommendation: reclassification from observer to dependent status. Laughter rippled from the upper tiers. The Vrith hegemony, 12 ambassadors, their scaled throats pulsing purple. One of them called down, "Go build another wooden boat, apes." Helena set her cup down with a soft click that echoed in the sudden hush. Then she stood, adjusted her jacket sleeves, wrinkled gray off the rack from a shop on Proxima Station. She walked toward the exit. Behind her, the human delegation of 6 followed in silence. At the threshold, she paused, turned, smiled once, small, tired, genuine. "Thank you for your time, Arbiter. We'll see ourselves out." The doors closed, 47 seconds of confused silence. Then the Assembly moved to the next agenda item. Conference Room 9B Lunar Embassy. The room was a converted storage bay. 4 electric kettles sat on a folding table. A whiteboard covered one wall, scrawled with numbers and ship routes and a single phrase in red marker: Operation Long Patience. A photograph hung beside the whiteboard. Marcus Vance, captain of the ECS Ardent, killed in the First Contact War 23 years ago, 11 days before his daughter's 4th birthday. Helena had named that daughter after his mother. She was 19 now. She didn't know about any of this. Helena stood at the head of the table. 7 people sat around her. 4 kettles hummed. "They've had 847 years of uninterrupted trade," she said. "We've had 23. Dr. Priya Sharma pushed her glasses up. 61 years old, theoretical xenoeconomist, grandmother of 5. The Assembly's currency, the mark, is backed by 3 commodities: Vrith-grown stem harvest, cephalid deep core metals, Xylos energy crystals. All 3 pass through human-shipped routes. We built their logistics without them noticing. Marcus Webb, ex-freight captain 49, his hands scarred from ropes and loading accidents and a knife fight in a docking bay 20 years ago, nodded. The slow knife. We've been documenting their supply chains for 11 years. Every ship, every route, every vulnerability. They never saw us because they never looked down. SGT, Alina Rostova knitted a sock throughout the briefing. 52 years old. Security. Never fired a shot in 18 years. She didn't look up from the needles. The best weapon is the one they don't know exists, she said quietly. My father taught me that. He was a fisherman. Lin Hui, 44, data analyst Intel, pulled up a hologram. On day 10, the assembly will have 0.7 days of stim harvest reserves, 11 days of metals, 3 days of energy crystals. Their economy collapses in sequence. Shipping first, hour 47. Then manufacturing, hour 62. Then food distribution, hour 89. She zoomed in. The hologram showed 93 worlds, each with a countdown timer. Some were already blinking yellow. Estimated casualties from starvation alone, Priya said quietly, 14 million across 12 worlds, if we do nothing. The room was still. Elena's knitting needles paused. James Okonkwo stopped pouring coffee. Helena looked at the photograph. Marcus Vance, smiling, holding their daughter. We're not going to do nothing, she said. Here's the number. She tapped the whiteboard. 17,422 human-crewed freighters currently operating in assembly space. We withdraw all of them, simultaneously. Marcus Webb leaned forward, and we close the gate. We close the gate. James Okonkwo reached into a bag and pulled out a loaf of bread. Sourdough, golden brown, still warm. The crust crackled when he set it down. My grandmother's starter, he said. 112 years old. She brought it from Kenya in a jar. My mother kept it alive through the First Contact War. She used to say, as long as the bread rises, we're still here. He cut 7 slices, passed them around. The bread cracked when Helena bit into it. The inside was soft, slightly sour, perfect. It tasted like earth, like patience, like something that had survived when so much else hadn't. Dr. Aris Thorne, 67, retired diplomat, had brought 12 pounds of coffee beans from Earth in his carry-on luggage, poured coffee into 7 mismatched mugs. Each mug was different. One had a chip in the rim. Helena took that one. We've been preparing for this longer than most assembly delegates have been alive, Thorne said. The Vrith ambassador who laughed at you? He's been in office for 6 years. He doesn't remember the war. He doesn't remember why the sanctions started. He just knows humans carry boxes. Helena looked at the photograph again. He knew the numbers. Marcus. He used to stay up all night running freight routes. He'd drink cold coffee and mutter to himself. Long patience, he'd say. Short memory for pain. She touched the chipped rim of her cup. We're going to finish them. 2 days later, a private channel. Ambassador Tikla of the Xylos, crystalline carapace. Genderless, 347 years old on their 4th regeneration cycle. Pulsed amber when they spoke. The light moved through their facets like fire through ice. You're not going to war, Tikla said, not a question. No. I've read your history, 1914, 1939, 2022. Tikla's voice was slow, deliberate. You're not doing this for revenge. Helena sliced an apple. The knife was dull. She had to press hard. The blade left marks on the cutting board. She offered half to Tikla, who couldn't eat it but accepted anyway. The crystalline carapace held the apple slice against its surface, absorbing nothing. The apple sat there, pressed against amber facets, a gift that could never be taken. Then why? Tikla asked. Because they called us weak in front of everyone. Helena bit into her half of the apple. The crunch was loud in the quiet office. And we're going to show them what weakness looks like. When the supply lines vanish. When the children go hungry because the adults forgot who carried their food. When the Vrith fleet runs out of fuel, and the Korathi finally rise up. Tikla was silent for 19 seconds. The apple slice stayed pressed against their carapace. Will you help us? Helena asked. Tikla's carapace pulsed amber, faster now, almost excited. I'll bring the Xylos, but also... A long pause. There are 6 other species who have been waiting for this. She listed them. The Hesh, 62 million scattered survivors. They had been refugees for 3 generations. They carried their homes in their ships. Their children had never seen a planet. The Vel, 4 billion, sanctioned, trade restricted. They had done nothing wrong except exist near the Vrith hegemony's expansion zone. Their economy had been collapsing for 300 years. The Korathi, 900 million enslaved. They built the assembly's luxury goods. They never saw the finished products. Their songs had been outlawed. Their language was dying. The Sil, 11 worlds, ignored. Their ambassadors had been waiting for a hearing for 40 years. The assembly had lost their paperwork, twice. The Engai, 3 billion, taxed to famine. They grew food they were not allowed to eat. Their children died of starvation while their harvests fed Vrith banquets. The 17 million forgotten. No one remembered why they had been sanctioned. The sanctions had never been removed. Their ambassador lived in a storage closet. 7 species, Helena said. 7, T-Claw's carapace rippled. Will handle the assembly's internal communications. They'll blame each other while you pull out. By the time they realize what's happening, your freighters will already be gone. The Vrith will scream about human aggression. The Cephalid will demand investigations, but the Vel will be silent. The Hesh will be silent. The Korathi will be silent, because they'll be waiting. Helena looked at the apple slice in T-Claw's carapace. What's your favorite human thing? T-Claw's facets rippled. Kettles, the sound they make when they're finished boiling, it's patient. The next 6 days passed in preparation. Priya Sharma ran the numbers 17 times. Each time the same result. 17,422 freighters, 9 days, 14 hours until withdrawal. 0.7 days of stim harvest. 11 days of metals, 3 days of energy crystals, 14 million at risk if they did nothing. She started dreaming in numbers. Woke up reaching for a calculator that wasn't there. Lin Hui tracked assembly chatter. The Vrith hegemony was planning a military parade. The Cephalid were opening a new trade route. No one was watching the freighters. No one ever watched the freighters. She found a memo from the Vrith ambassador's office. Logistics are boring. Focus on the fleet. She saved it. Alina Rostova knitted socks, 7 of them, 1 for each team member, gray wool, slightly too big. In case anyone gets cold feet, she said. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. James Okonkwo baked bread every morning. The sourdough starter sat on the counter, bubbling quietly. 112 years old. His grandmother had brought it from Kenya. His mother had kept it alive through the war. He had carried it through space in a jar, wrapped in a towel, checking it every day like it was a child. This is what we are, James said on day 6, handing Helena a warm slice. Not warriors, not heroes, just people who bake bread while empires crumble. Helena spread butter on the bread. That sounds like a line from a speech. It's a line from my grandmother, he grinned. She also said never trust a person who doesn't like bread. What about people who can't eat bread? The Xylos get a pass. On day 7, the Korathi ambassador sent a message. 1 sentence. The children are ready to sing again. Helena didn't know what that meant, but T-Claw did. T-Claw's carapace pulsed amber for 3 hours straight. On day 8, Helena stood in front of the whiteboard. The numbers blurred. She hadn't slept in 30 hours. Marcus Webb touched her shoulder. You should sleep. I should finish. You should sleep, he said again, because if you collapse, the whole thing collapses, and Marcus would never forgive me. He looked at the photograph. I named the operation after him. Long patience, it was his phrase. He used to say it before every difficult run. Long patience, short memory for pain. Helena nodded. He would have hated the waiting. He would have hated the waiting, Webb agreed. But he would have loved the numbers. On day 9, the final briefing, Lin Hui pulled up the hologram one last time. At 0800 GST tomorrow, 17,422 freighters will dock at non-assembly ports. Xylos space. Hesh outposts, 3 unaligned stations, empty holds, crews already planetside. Drinking coffee, baking bread, knitting socks. She zoomed out. The assembly's central market platform will freeze at 0803. The Vrith will demand an emergency session at 0814 and at 0947. She paused. Supreme Arbiter Vex will open a channel to Helena. Elena Rostova held up the 7th sock. I finished the last one. These are warmer than those cheap diplomatic shoes. She handed Helena a pair. Gray, slightly too big, the wool was soft. Helena sat down and took off her shoes. The cheap diplomatic issue shoes. The kind the assembly issued to non-voting member species. She pulled on the socks, put her shoes back on. Thank you, Sergeant. Elena nodded. Don't mention it. Day 10, 0800 GST. The freighters docked. Not one by one, not in sequence, all of them simultaneously. 17,422 human-crewed ships set down on non-assembly ports. Xylos space. Hesh outposts, 3 unaligned stations, empty holds, crews already planetside, drinking coffee, baking bread, knitting socks. On the Xylos homeworld, a Hesh child saw a human for the first time. The human was drinking tea and crying. The child asked why. The human said, because I've been waiting 11 years to stop running. The child didn't understand, but they held the human's hand anyway. At 0803, the assembly's central market platform froze. No stim harvest moving, no metals trading. No energy crystals changing hands. The screens went red. A cephalid bureaucrat stared at her terminal. She refreshed. The screen stayed red. She refreshed again, still red. She called her supervisor. System error, the supervisor said. Give it a minute. At 0805, the Vrith military attaché tried to requisition fuel for the fleet near the Korathi worlds. System error. He tried again. System error. He called the fuel depot. No answer. He called the shipping office. No answer. He called the freight dispatcher. The freight dispatcher's line was dead. At 0809, the cephalid supervisor ran a diagnostic. The diagnostic returned one line of text. No human-crewed freighters currently operating in assembly space. The supervisor read the line 3 times. Then she called the Vrith attaché. Do you know anything about this? The Vrith attaché was already pale. The freighters, he said, they're gone. All of them, 17,422 ships. Simultaneously, the supervisor stared at her terminal. The screens were still red. Who authorized this? No one answered. At 0814, the Vrith hegemony's ambassador demanded an emergency session. She was still in her quarters, still in her night clothes, screaming at a screen. What is happening? Where are the ships? No one answered. At 0822, a cephalid trade minister ran the numbers. 0.7 days of stim harvest left, 11 days of metals, 3 days of energy crystals. He ran them again, same result. He ran them a third time, using a different terminal, a different algorithm, a different set of assumptions. Same result. He sat back in his chair. We're going to starve, he said. No one heard him. At 0841, the Vel ambassador, one of the sanctioned species, one of the 6 Tikla had named, stood up in the assembly chamber. The emergency session had just begun. Delegates were still arriving, still confused, still checking their terminals. I believe, the Vel ambassador said quietly, the humans have withdrawn their logistics. Laughter from the upper tiers, the Vrith hegemony, their scaled throats pulsing purple. Logistics, the Vrith ambassador said. They're freight carriers, they carry boxes. The Vel ambassador sat down. She didn't argue. She didn't need to. At 0855, the Vrith ambassador tried to order fuel for her own ship. System error. She tried again. System error. She tried a third time. No human-crewed freighters currently operating in assembly space. The Vrith ambassador stopped laughing. 0947. Supreme Arbiter Vex opened the channel. Helena sat in her Montana kitchen. Snow falling outside. Real snow, not recycled station water. Snow that had fallen from a real sky onto real trees, the kettle on the stove beginning to heat. On the screen, Vex's central eye contracted. His auxiliary eyes swiveled. His translator gland hummed. Ambassador, he said, we need your ships. Helena didn't stand, didn't adjust her jacket, didn't reach for a cup. She watched the snow. I'm sorry, Arbiter. Her voice was quiet. I don't believe we've been introduced. You're speaking to a dependent species. We're not qualified to assist. Vex's central eye contracted further. His skin pulsed purple. You'll let billions starve. Helena looked at the screen, at Vex's frozen eye, at the auxiliary eyes swiveling, searching for an answer that wasn't there. Behind Vex, on a secondary screen she could see but he couldn't, T-Claw's crystalline carapace pulsed amber. No, Arbiter, her voice was still quiet. That's the one thing you never understood about us. She reached for the kettle. We won't let anyone starve. We'll feed your worlds, all 93 of them, at our prices, on our terms, through our ships. Vex's translator gland pulsed twice, then stopped. The screen went silent. The kettle began to whistle. Helena counted her breaths. 14. The same number she'd counted on the assembly floor 37 days ago when they'd called her species dependent, when they'd laughed, when she'd set her cup down with a soft click and walked out. She picked up her chipped cup. 2 sugars, steam rising. The cup was warm, the snow was cold. You called us weak. We walked out. You shut the gates yourselves when you voted us down. She took a slow sip. And now you get to watch. The screen flickered. Vex's translator gland hummed, trying to reboot. Somewhere in the assembly chamber, a junior aide whispered, "What do we do?" No one answered. Helena sat in her Montana kitchen, snow still falling, the kettle still whistling. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched Vex's central eye slowly come back to life. You can't do this, Vex said. His voice was different now, less hiss, more rasp. You're one species, one small species. We are 93. You were 93, Helena said. Some of your members just switched sides. Behind Vex, the secondary screen showed T-Claw's carapace pulsing faster. The Xylo's ambassador was speaking to someone off camera. Then the image split. 6 new faces appeared on Helena's screen. The Hesh, the Vel, the Korathi, the Sil, the Engai, the Ith. 7 species, all of them silent, all of them watching. Vex's auxiliary eyes swiveled toward the split screen. What is this? This is the coalition you forgot existed, Helena said. The species you sanctioned, the worlds you ignored, the children you let starve while you debated trade routes. The Vel ambassador spoke first. The humans withdrew their freighters at 0800 GST. The Vel trade fleet is standing by to assist any world that recognizes our sovereignty. The Korathi ambassador spoke second. The Korathi slave worlds are in open revolt. The Vrith fleet has no fuel. We will win by nightfall. The Hesh representative spoke third. The Hesh are no longer refugees. The Xylos have granted us asylum. We will never carry assembly cargo again. One by one, the 6 species spoke. Their voices were calm. Their words were final. Vex's central eye contracted to a pinprick. You planned this. 11 years, Helena said. 11 years of what? She looked down at her cup. Chipped rim, 2 sugars. The tea was still warm. Patience, she said. The next hour was chaos. Helena watched it unfold on the secondary screen. The assembly chamber had become a riot. Vrith ambassadors screamed at cephalid trade ministers. Cephalid trade ministers screamed at their own aides. The Sil ambassador, the one who had been waiting 40 years for a hearing, stood up and demanded floor recognition. No one listened. She demanded again. Still no one listened. So she walked to the center of the chamber and sat down. Other ambassadors joined her. The Vel, the Engai, the Hesh representative who had never been allowed on the floor before. They sat in silence, 47 of them, then 90, then 200. What are they doing? Marcus Webb's voice came through Helena's earpiece. He was still on Luna watching the same feed. They're waiting, Helena said. For what? For the assembly to remember they exist. The Vrith ambassador tried to order the guards to remove the sitting delegates. The guards looked at the screens, at the frozen markets, at the red error messages, at the 17,422 missing freighters, and did nothing. At 10:22, Supreme Arbiter Vex called for a recess. No one moved. At 10:34, the cephalid trade minister who had run the numbers earlier stood up. He was shaking. His translator gland kept stuttering. The humans, he said, have offered to resume food shipments at their prices on their terms. The Vrith ambassador laughed. Their prices, their freight carriers. The trade minister looked at her. They're the only freight carriers we have left. The chamber went quiet. Helena's kettle had stopped whistling. The water was cooling. She poured it anyway, 2 sugars, the chipped rim against her lip. Her earpiece crackled, Lin Hui. The Vrith fleet near the Korathi worlds just sent a distress call. They're out of fuel. The Korathi are boarding the ships. Casualties? None yet. The Vrith surrendered. They didn't have a choice. Helena closed her eyes. Marcus Vance's photograph sat on her kitchen counter. She could see him in her memory, young, smiling, holding their daughter. He had been so sure the war would end quickly. He had been wrong. We did it, Marcus, she whispered. The photograph didn't answer. 12:15 GST. The assembly reconvened. Vex looked different, smaller. His central eye kept twitching. His auxiliary eyes had stopped swiveling. They just pointed at the floor. The assembly recognizes the human delegation, he said. Helena was still in Montana, still in her kitchen, still in her gray, wrinkled jacket and her warm wool socks. She didn't stand, didn't bow, didn't smile. Thank you, Arbiter. The assembly wishes to negotiate the return of human-crewed freighters to assembly trade routes. That's not how this works, Helena said. You don't get to negotiate, you get to accept. The Vrith ambassador stood up. This is extortion. No, Helena said. This is what happens when you call someone weak in front of the galaxy. This is what happens when you laugh at the people who feed your children. This is what happens when you forget that logistics isn't boring, logistics is sovereignty. She set her cup down, soft click. 17,422 ships. 11 years of planning. 7 species who remembered each other. 1 door. What door? Vex asked. The door we walked through when you voted us dependent. You shut it behind us. Now you're on the other side. She stood up not to leave, just to stretch. Her back ached from sitting. She was 58 years old. She had been doing this for 23 years. She was tired. Here are our terms, she said. She read them from a piece of paper. Handwritten. Marcus Webb's handwriting, actually. He had nice script for a former freight captain. 1. Human observer status is elevated to voting member. Full voting rights, no restrictions. The Vrith ambassador started to object. Vex raised an auxiliary eye. She stopped. 2. Section 94, Bench 7 is demolished. Humans will sit on the same level as every other voting species. No objection, just silence. 3. The Hesh are granted asylum on Xylo's worlds. Their refugee status ends. They will have representation in this assembly within 1 standard year. The Hesh representative, the one who had never been allowed on the floor, put her head in her hands. She was crying. 4. All sanctions against the Vel are lifted immediately. Their voting rights are restored. Their trade routes are reopened. The Vel ambassador nodded once. No smile, just a nod. 5. The Korathi are granted full emancipation. The Vrith hegemony will pay reparations for 600 years of enslavement. The amount will be calculated by an independent council. 1 human, 1 Xylos, 1 Korathi. The Vrith ambassador's scaled throat pulsed purple. That's impossible. We don't have that much currency. Then you'll pay in goods, Helena said. Food, metals, ships. Whatever the Korathi need to rebuild. 6. The Sil are granted immediate floor recognition. Their 40-year wait for a hearing is over. Their first item of business will be a trade agreement with the Engai at fair prices, set by the Sil and Engai alone. The Sil ambassador, the old woman who had been waiting 4 decades, stood up. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. 7. The Ith sanctions are lifted. No one remembers why they were imposed. No one will investigate. They are simply gone. The Ith ambassador, the young man who lived in a storage closet, covered his mouth with both hands. He was 23 years old. He had never known a world without sanctions. 8. The Engai will set their own food prices. No more famine taxes, no more harvest seizures. Their children will eat before assembly delegates do. The Engai ambassador, the former farmer who had watched her grandmother starve, stood up. I accept, she said, on behalf of 3 billion people who have been waiting for this day. 9. The Xylos are granted permanent observer status on all assembly trade committees. Their carapace color will be added to the assembly flag. Their favorite human sound, the whistle of a finished kettle, will be played at the start of every session. Teklaw's carapace pulsed amber. That's not necessary. It's necessary, Helena said. You reminded us that patience is a weapon the galaxy should remember. 10. She paused, looked at the photograph of Marcus Vance. All human freight pilots lost to piracy, to accidents, to the Assembly's dependent classification will be memorialized on Luna. Their names will be read once a year. Their families will receive back pay and apology. The chamber was silent. The Assembly will vote on these terms, Vex said. Now. The Vrith ambassador raised her hand. The Vrith hegemony votes no. Recorded, Vex said. Other votes. The Vel ambassador voted yes. The Sil ambassador voted yes. The Engai ambassador voted yes. The Hesh representative, who technically didn't have a vote yet, raised her hand anyway. Vex didn't stop her. The Korathi ambassador voted yes. The Ith ambassador voted yes. The Xylos ambassador voted yes. 1 by 1, 73 species voted yes. 12 voted no, 8 abstained. The motion carries, Vex said. His central eye was still twitching. The human delegation is granted full voting status. Section 94, Bench 7 will be demolished. All other terms are accepted. Helena sat down, picked up her cup. The tea was cold. She drank it anyway. 47 days later. Section 94, Bench 7 was gone. Not demolished, removed. The stone platform had been lifted out and replaced with a new section level with the 93rd tier. Humans would sit there now, on equal ground. Helena wasn't there to see it. She was on Luna, standing in front of a stone plaque. The plaque was black, polished. The names were carved in white. Marcusvance, Captain ECS Ardent. Below his name, 1,842 others, freight pilots, men and women who had died moving boxes so the galaxy could eat. Helena stood alone. The cup was in her hands, chipped rim, 2 sugars, the tea was warm. She read the names, not all of them, there were too many, but some. The ones she remembered, the ones who had flown with Marcus, the ones who had stayed behind when the war started, the ones who had kept flying even after the Assembly called them dependent. We finished it, she said, her voice was quiet. The wind on Luna had no atmosphere to carry sound, but she spoke anyway. 17,422 ships, 9 years of active planning, 7 species, 1 door. She placed the cup on the stone. Chipped ceramic, 2 sugars, the tea would freeze in minutes, that was fine. You knew the numbers, Marcus, we finished them. She turned and walked back to the airlock. Alina Rostova was waiting. She wasn't knitting. She was just standing there, hands at her sides, watching. Did you say goodbye? Alina asked. I said what needed to be said. Alina nodded. That's the same thing. Conference Room 9B Lunar Embassy. Same room, same whiteboard, same 4 electric kettles. But the whiteboard was clean now. No numbers, no ship routes, no red marker phrase, just the photograph of Marcus Vance still watching over the room. Dr. Eris Thorne was grinding coffee beans by hand. The sound was slow, rhythmic, patient. "You know what we are, Helena?" he said without looking up. "Not warriors, not economists, not even particularly brave." Helena sat down, poured herself a cup of tea, 2 sugars, the kettle had just finished boiling. It had made the sound T-Claw loved. The whistle that meant something was ready. "What are we?" she asked. Thorne poured the grounds into a filter. "We're the species that brings a kettle to a knife fight. That bakes bread while empires collapse. That remembers the names of the dead while negotiating with the living." The kettle was silent now. The coffee was dripping. "That's what terrifies them," Thorne continued. "Not our weapons, not our ships, not our numbers, our patience." Helena looked at the photograph. Marcus Vance, smiling, holding their daughter. She had been 4 when he died. She was 27 now, a biologist, working on a HESH refugee world, studying soil chemistry. She didn't know her mother had just collapsed in economy. "She would be proud of you," Thorne said. "She doesn't know. She will when she's ready." Helena sipped her tea. The chipped rim was soft now, worn down by 9 years of use. It fit her lip perfectly. "T-Claw sent a message," Thorne said. "The Xylos Council held a vote. They're adding the kettle whistle to their flag ceremony. Before every session, they play a recording." "A recording of what?" "My kettle from the first day you met with them," Thorne smiled. T-Claw recorded it, said it was the most human sound they'd ever heard. Helena laughed. It was small, tired, genuine. The same laugh she'd been carrying for 23 years. "What about the assembly?" she asked. "Are they playing kettle whistles?" "The assembly is still arguing about the flag. The Vrith want to keep their purple stripe. The Cephalid want to move their eye symbol to the center. The Korathi want to add a broken chain." Thorne poured coffee into his mug. "It'll take years." "Good, good, good," Helena said. "Let them argue, we'll be baking bread." Outside the window, the lunar surface was gray and still. No snow, no wind, just dust and silence and the distant glow of Earth. Helena watched it for a long time. James Okonkwo came in with a fresh loaf of bread. Sourdough, golden brown, the crust crackled when he set it down. "The starter's still alive," he said. 112 years old, maybe 113, I lost count. "Are you still going to open that bakery?" "On the HESH world," he nodded. "Next month, I've got a partner, a HESH woman named Mora. She makes flatbread. We're going to combine recipes." Helena cut a slice. The bread was warm, soft, slightly sour. "What are you going to call it?" "The patient kettle," James said. "T-Claw's idea." Helena laughed again, the same laugh, small, tired, genuine. "That's a terrible name for a bakery." "It's a great name for a bakery. You just don't have any taste." She bit into the bread. It was perfect. Elena Rostova stood by the whiteboard. She wasn't knitting. She was just looking at the clean surface. "I've never seen it empty," she said. "First time for everything," Helena replied. "I'm going to miss it, the numbers, the roots, the red marker." Elena touched the whiteboard. Her fingers left faint smudges. "It felt like we were building something." "We were. And now." Helena looked at the photograph of Marcus Vance. "Now we make sure it stays built." The screen on the wall flickered. T-Claw's face appeared, carapace amber, facets rippling. "Helena, the assembly ratified the trade agreements. All 93 species, no objections." "No objections." The Vrith tried to object. The Korathi ambassador played a recording of Vrith soldiers surrendering. The Vrith withdrew their objection. Helena set her cup down, soft click. "When does the first shipment go out?" "Tomorrow, 0800 GST. Human-crewed freighters, same ships, same crews, different terms." "What are the terms?" T-Claw's carapace pulsed. "Fair ones." Helena nodded. "That's all we wanted." "I know," T-Claw paused. "Helena, the Xylos have a tradition. At the end of a long negotiation, we sit in silence for the same number of seconds as the negotiation took years. Our negotiation took 11 years. "Yes." 11 seconds of silence. "Yes." Helena looked at her team. James was cutting bread. Aris was pouring coffee. Elena was still staring at the whiteboard. Marcus Webb was reading something on his tablet. Lin Hui was knitting. She had picked up Elena's habit. "Okay," Helena said. 11 seconds. The screen went quiet. T-Claw's carapace stopped pulsing. The room was silent. Helena counted. 1, the bread was warm in her hand. 2, the coffee was dripping. 3, the photograph of Marcus Vance watched over them. 4, Elena's knitting needles made soft clicks. 5, Somewhere on Luna, the stone plaque stood in the vacuum. 17,422 ships. 7 species. 8 one door. 9 the chipped rim of her cup. 10 two sugars. 11 Tiklaw's carapace pulsed again. Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Tiklaw. One more thing. The Sil ambassador requested a meeting. She wants to discuss terraforming technology. She says the Sil have been sitting on a method for turning dead worlds into gardens. They've been waiting for the right partners. Helena smiled. Tell her we'll bring the kettles. That night, Helena sat alone in her Montana kitchen. Real snow was falling, not recycled station water, not lunar dust. Real snow from a real sky falling on real trees. The kettle was on the stove, not boiling, just sitting there. Her cup was in her hands, chipped rim, 2 sugars, the tea was warm. She looked at the photograph of Marcus Vance. She had brought it back from Luna. It sat on her kitchen counter now, propped against the salt shaker. We did it, she said. 11 years, 7 species, 1 door. The photograph didn't answer. The Vrith ambassador called me a week ago. She wanted to apologize, not for laughing, for not seeing us. She said the assembly had been looking up for so long they forgot to look down. She sipped her tea. I told her that's where we've always been, looking down, carrying boxes, baking bread, waiting. The kettle began to whistle. Helena didn't get up. She just sat there watching the snow, listening to the sound Tiklaw loved. The sound that meant something was ready. Outside, the snow covered the graves of 1,842 pilots who never saw the door close. Inside, the kettle whistled, and Helena Vance, who had been patient for 11 years, poured herself another cup of tea.